Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Scott Ufford, and he's going to tell us about his near-death experience. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Peggy. Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Now you're from Texas? Is that right?
I live in Texas right now. Just moved a few months ago. I lived in the state of New York, which is entering a state of I don't know. There's some problems going on in that state, and I just
Good
find
bet.
it more enjoyable here in Texas right now.
Good, good. Okay, you can start wherever you like. Take as long as you like.
All right, great. Um, yeah, I'm going to go back in the story a little bit to before my NDE, and that's basically to say that I grew up in upstate New York, way out in the country, had no concept of a lot of the rest of the world, but I would like walk around in the woods, and I heard about how other kids had like imaginary friends that they would like have on their walks in the woods, and I never had any of those friends. It was just me and my dog. So I tried to picture things, but later on in life, things would come to me, even though those imaginary friends never happened. So to hop ahead several years, my grandfather, Lewis Hammond, was a true character. He was a real character. He was a great storyteller. And no matter what he told, um, the truth could always be, elaborated on a little bit. Now, he was a farmer, and he outlived he outlived all his wives, consecutive, not polygamy. And when he died, I was there at the nursing home, and I realized that he had passed on. He was very peaceful, very calm. His body was too peaceful and too calm. And I realized that he'd died. And then I went and I spoke to the nursing home staff, and they said, "Oh no, you have to get out of the room." In other words, like there's this whole fear about death and fear about that part of life. So he did his duty. He outlived everybody that he'd promised to take care of during his life. And later on that year, this was in the 90s, um, I had a very clear dream where I went and saw my grandfather still sitting in his favorite chair, in the chair that he died in the nursing home. And it was as if his energy was still there. Like some part of himself was still seeing this reality of here as being where the real deal was. Now, in this dream, I saw my grandfather, and I basically said to him, "Grandpa, wake up. You're you're actually alive. You're actually okay." And his spirit, soul, his essence, whatever, was kind of like, "What? Huh?" And I took his hand. I took a few steps further, and then my niece, whose name started with A, appeared to me to my side, to the other side. Now, I haven't said this to her mother, even though I wrote to our sister about it. But this was it was like in October of the year that my grandfather had died in. So my grandfather was to one side, and I was holding his hand. I felt like I was meant to like guide him onwards to the next. But then, whatever it was. Now, at my other hand, I saw my niece, name started with A. And I said to her, "Don't be afraid." She says, "I'm not afraid." So I realized this is very, very special little girl. And I said, "What do you see?" And I had my eyes closed. And she pictured in her mind like what she saw, she said, "I see a temple." I didn't know at this time that she had declared to her mother and father that she was Jewish. It was not something that a little child just does out of the blue. So I saw this glowing temple like in front of me, above me, maybe like 2 feet in front, above at a diagonal. And I started to take her and him. I just started both like walking like one in each hand. And then somebody called me upstairs. So I left the two of them and they just sort of continued walking. When I came back down, I said, "Where is she?" And they said, "Oh, she's been taken upstairs. She's okay." Now, I thought that that was my job to do, but that was where that dream vision ended, and I wrote it in my notebook. Thing was, she hadn't died at that time yet. 3 months later, she had an incident at a get-together that some family members had for a holiday. And because I've always been involved in doing prayer for healing for people and things, as soon as I got word that a terrible thing had happened and she was unconscious, somehow in this incredibly busy workplace that I was at, in the middle of the night practically, I found a room that was empty, even though there was massive production work going on. I went in there and I prayed, and I pictured a golden healing, like a bridge, like an arc of like golden healing going to her. And I pictured it with all my might. But then I got a sense of when it was time to close it back down. And I prayed and I asked, and I had this like British dictionary. What is it? It's got like 12 million words in it or something. I asked for guidance on it. And I had my eyes closed, I asked for guidance on it, and I flipped through the pages with my eyes closed, and I opened to one page. And that page was a term in Hebrew for lamentations for the dead. And this went through me. It just completely, total shiver all up and down. And what all this said to me was that here I am, knowing nothing and nobody knowing anything about her having a terrible accident months later. And yet there I was encountering her, who was still alive, and my grandfather, who'd passed on a few months before, and helping take care of both of them. So to me, this meant that for everyone, there is a plan. For everyone, no matter when they pass on, or no matter what happens, they die halfway or partway or all the way, there's always a plan involved. And your spiritual self knows this. Your conscious self might not know it, but your spiritual self, the innermost core of you, which is actually like as big as all of the heavens, but we always think of it as not being able to be found. Your inner self is in communication with the higher guidance that is there for each and every person's life. There's no way, because this little girl, A, was in the best of health, and what happened to her was nothing that you could possibly imagine would happen. So this said to me that there are people who, when they die, parts of them are still kind of entranced with being here in this physical realm. And indeed, living in New York City and being on the subway and standing on the platform for long hours, I did glimpse what you could call just sort of like passing by, like different sorts of, people call it shades, but it's actually like a little bit of brightness of somebody going past. So there's definitely people who are caught up in it and are caught up in this physical existence. So the fact that I recorded all this in my notebook about my niece months before anything out of the blue, seemingly out of the blue, happened, to me meant that time is not just going in a direct line and we know nothing along the way and there's no purpose to anything. And later on, we're just there to pick up the pieces of whatever terrible event has happened. And I mean, every parent and every relative of a child knows that it's just like the very worst thing is to lose your child. It's like lose your life, great, but you don't want to lose your child. So I got involved in two things at the same time. One was with the ARE, Association Research and Enlightenment, the Edgar Cayce organization. And I joined a Search for God study group, which was very deeply spiritual and powerful. And everybody in it had different gifts, some that they didn't even know to themselves. And I also joined a spiritualist church, which is a place that I think that this has been around within Christianity for ages, and all different religions that have a true connection, that people actually have the capacity to receive intuitive insights into things. And people also, depending on their purpose in this life, and if it's actually useful for them and helps them develop spiritually versus becoming like an ego-focused thing. Everybody has the capacity to communicate with the other side. I'll mention that when I was a little kid, I didn't understand about speaking from inspiration. I was like a very fidgety little kid. And my mom took us to a Quaker church. And I did not understand the principle of levitation, for example, or that someone could speak from pure inspiration. But what happened was that the whole place was silent. And I was a very fidgety little kid, like 6 or 7. And all of a sudden, a lady behind me stood up and started singing at the top of her lungs at the full heart, full spirit. And I went like, and I don't know how I even landed in the seat again. But that was like the first jolt to my energy system that, oh, there's something beyond people talking about just heaven and hell in this like terrible, absolute, permanent, this is the end, my friend, kind of way. So that was a real jolt. And over the years as a spiritualist minister, basically, in brief, I started out because I wanted to get experience in writing. And the teacher at that time, when I went to this tiny little church with, picture of Jesus, and, it was a very Christian spiritualist church in Manhattan that was dedicated to communication between oneself and the higher realms only for the purpose of helping people. Only for the purpose of helping people. I think I lost my train of thought there, but
Yeah, he's talking about the Spiritualist church. They're there just to help people. It can't, like, it has to be something good, but they connect with the other realms.
Excellent memory, thank you. And your notes are
Notes.
thank you.
How to look. I can think of the next word. What you called them. Other realms.
Yeah, so my experience in this place was that there's all kinds of people who are attracted to learning more about their spiritual selves. And every religion, and I would say that every religion, every spiritual path has truth in it if it has saints, it has those elevated ones who have transcended all the ritual and transcended all the talk and really are like at one with God, and even beyond that, no matter what the terminology is. So I just went to the Spiritualist church because I wanted to like learn about how to enhance my creative writing. Because I said to myself, and I was always, all my life, I was trying to understand the saying of seek first the kingdom of heaven, and then, all things shall be added to you. I mean, particularly like in a materialist world like United States and all we have going on here, understanding that is really difficult because it's like, I'm not a monastic, I'm not, so finding the balance and then finding that in New York City has been a real challenge.
I bet.
It is everywhere. It is everywhere. And it is for every single one of us. And one thing that people have to understand is that people in other religions are seeking truth and seeking their spiritual understanding and trying to find the best way to survive and make the most in this lifetime, both monetarily, but most importantly, spiritually and in family growth and everything. Everybody is trying to access this and contact this. And so every religion presents a different spiritual path for people of different cultures and for people who have different senses or understandings in that lifetime of what they need. Like maybe somebody needs extreme discipline in their lifetime. And so they're drawn to that, which gives them extreme discipline. Maybe they're drawn to extreme discipline for the purpose of being able to rebel against it. Because either in some other lifetime or just earlier in this lifetime, they had trouble speaking up for themselves. Maybe someone vibes to music. So hymns are what connect them in, the singing of it. For some people, being a doctor or a nurse, the healing process, or being a mother or a father, that healing process of reckoning with this stubborn little soul that you're dealing with that's growing up while you're just growing up into figuring out what being a parent is all about. Maybe that's part of your religion. Raising your child becomes part of your religion, no matter what it is. So I came to understand, well, not very easily, that every religion has a vital spiritual path to the degree that it has those who have entered what I would call sainthood. In other words, really transcended everything. So I've sat in meditation a lot and I've attuned for different people. And my purpose has always been to find and create healing for people, sometimes by doing laying on of hands, sometimes like with New York City's ARE, that Paul Dorogoff leads the Healing Prayers Circle, and he's done it for like the last 50 or 60 years. We meet online and we pray for direct healing to go to people that ask for direct healing, and for love and light to surround people who you want to just ask for love and light for them, and for the souls of people who've just passed over or who are in the process of passing over to receive God's love and light, and that they be guided in the right direction for them. So what happened with me on my own NDE? Well, I know that my physical body died, because there I wasn't just being lazy. I knew that my physical body was dead, and I looked down at it. And I did this thing of going towards a light. The thing was that I realized that the light was actually inside me. So while I was telescoping upwards towards this light, I also realized that the light was actually a center in me. And so it was like a merging. And there was no reason for my physical body to be dead, but all I could conclude was that the angels or the spiritual teachers and healers wanted to show me something more, because life in its biggest crises always shows us a little more, sometimes a lot more. So I died, I went towards this light, and I became aware that the presence that I was going towards was in my mind of Jesus. At the same time, that was the face that was given to me. And since Jesus Christ completely entered into oneness with Heavenly Father, which is why he became Jesus Christ, not just Jesus' mom and dad's child. So I saw his face, and then I went deeper. And it was like a voice said to me, "You want a little more?" And like, okay. So I went towards what people like to call a past life review. The difference about this, which I hadn't heard described, was that not only did I see every major moment of importance before my eyes and realize that this was put before God, but the spirit, the presence, that's the tiny little spark that's in each and every one of us. I realized that not only did I see this, and not only was it not judgmental or accusatory or confusing, because if I didn't understand what it was all about, then it would have just been little old me getting beaten up by big old God, which doesn't fit any sense of reality. So when I said yes to knowing a little more, I went into this review. I saw every image of what was considered to be important in my lifetime to my soul. High points, low points. Each one was like, it was like, instead of like the whole panorama, it was like a Twitter feed. It's like, it's like you got like 400 characters and there you go. So I saw every major important time in my life that was important spiritually. And I recognized it, but I also saw in every moment the exact and full meaning of it explained to me within every image of event that flashed before my eyes or inside my spiritual eye, or whatever you want to call it. So everything was completely explained to me and understood, each just like a card in a deck. If somebody goes with it, and they're not hiding any cards in the deck, they're showing you the full thing. I got every single meaning of important success, failure, work in progress, really bad stuff, some good stuff. Everything was there presented in a way so that my little human consciousness could get it all in an instant, each and every slice instantly. And as each one flashed before my eyes, it was complete in its meaning. My understanding of it was complete. but it really only made the full sense as the whole thing went. So for me, it was just astounding. And I felt like it was this incredible gift that was given to me, because nowhere in there did I feel judged. But I did feel very clearly, and I saw very clearly and understood very clearly the moments when I completely screwed up, and moments when I sort of blinded myself to or ignored what were the really important spiritual stuff going on in relationships with people, in my relationship with the discipline of prayer and everything. And I realized that God didn't have to judge me, because if God is with you every step of your lifetime, then he already knows what's going on. Every single thing about us is completely known and understood in every single second, Peggy. So it's like, who am I justifying to? Who am I arguing with? Who am I defending to? It's like, it's absurd. It's actually absurd. And so God has infinite patience with whatever lessons that we have to learn. Just like here, though, to go to the next grade of whatever our learning is for our lifetime, we got to pass the class enough. And you can't cheat off other kids' exam papers. So this was big, and this made a big impact on me, because I felt when I returned to my physical body, it was like, there it was. I'd been looking down on it, and it was absolutely nothing going on. And later on, I thought of where St. Paul had been told that a young man had died. I don't remember exactly, but he'd been told that a young man had died. And he went there, and basically everybody laughed at him when he said, he looks dead to you, but his spirit, his soul is still connected. And they said that he went and he actually laid down, face down on the young man to bring the full energy of his body and his healing and the Holy Spirit to focus on this child, to focus on this young man, whatever it was. And it took some time, but he was revived. So a lot's going on since then. And there is something I would definitely like to talk about, but about Martin Luther King, but I do want to open this up for any comment or anything you want to say, because it's all good to me. I'd love to hear anything you want to
So you
say.
say you didn't have a physical death. What do you think happened to cause a near-death experience?
Well, my body was laying there basically dead. I mean, there was no pulse, there was no nothing. So I think I was being shown I think I was just being given a gift of being shown the nature of reality, because there I was all the time, like as a minister and in my, I'll call it my little gaudy Appleseed ways, like planting little seeds of thought with people.
Did someone take your pulse?
No, there was nobody to take my pulse. I just looked down, and there I was just completely gone. It was like, so I never bothered to do a YouTube thing or any video about this, simply because it all made full sense to me. And I understood that looking down, there my physical body was dead, because I've had out of body experiences a few times, and I just immediately recognized and felt the difference. And being taken into this whole death judgment thing, and the whole judgment thing that only happens when you're gone. And when I got to that certain stage, the teacher or the voice or whatever it was that said to me, do you want to know more? Do you want to go deeper? So I have no proof of that, and I'm comfortable with that.
Why do you think it happened? Was you under a lot of stress or depression or anything?
I think it happened. Sorry, I got it. I think it happened because I'd reached a certain point in understanding the nature about life and death. And, I actually can't even remember exactly the year that this happened, but it was several years ago. I brought through messages and guidance for people in a spiritual setting, so many things from beyond, and so much intuitive guidance for people over the years. And so I think I wouldn't say necessarily comfortable, but I got good at that, at understanding things on that level. But this completely blew my mind, because I had no concept that when a person dies and they go through judgment, that judgment is not like a school teacher who's there to smack them with the ruler. And judgment always sounded and seemed like an unfair thing, because we have this little life where we make all our mistakes and stuff. It wasn't until later that so this helped me put together more of understanding of reality. And then after that, the event with my niece happened. There's always been plenty of drama in my life, because like Edgar Casey, on an extremely, extremely, extremely miniature version of things, I'd always asked and wondered, is this real? Is this good for people? Is this good for me? Is there truth coming through? Is this the highest use that I can make of my energies? So being shown something universal about the nature of what every person experiences when they leave here and they're really gone, explained to me how God is actually all loving, all understanding. Chastising is all part of the deal. It's all part of the deal. It's all part of the teaching, because no kid ever grew up without their parent in a healthy way, without their parents saying, no. And there's actually a better way. And just because you're 13, eventually you'll find out you don't actually know everything about the world.
My grandkids, some of them are starting to become teenagers, and
Do you know completely what I'm talking about?
they think money is going to grow on trees when they graduate high school. They're going to have this fancy car, and how you going to pay for that?
Well, if they learn how to pick pecans or something, then, or walnuts or mulberries, then that can help pay for the car. But it's not all get rich off the internet or cryptos or something.
Yeah, I didn't realize that they were so fascinated with YouTubers, and to find out their grandma's a YouTuber. They're like, what? That blew their image of YouTubers.
So after you exploded their brains, do they look at you? How do they look at you differently now?
They had a lot of questions, like how do I do it, and how many views do I have, and what do you do about the comments, and they want to look at my phone and see my views and see stuff, and how much money do you make, and all those things. It's so funny.
Well, that's good that they showed the superficial interest, because eventually they'll grow more into it.
They want to have YouTube channels now. Of course, their parents won't let them. So. It's not a good idea for children.
Well, it sounds like you're proud of them. It sounds like you're proud
Yeah.
of them, and you have a lot to be happy about. So I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Do you want to hear about? Want to hear more about Martin Luther King or
Yes,
Andrew
I
Keys?
do. I'm curious about that.
Okay. Um, Part of my thing that I always had in my mind somewhere was, how do I seek the kingdom of God? What do I do with the skills and the gifts that I have? How do I use them for good? Not like Google that says, do no evil, and then just define evil down to so small that it doesn't. In other words, and I've like radically crashed and burned in so many different things and prospered in other things. But the whole thing about figuring out what to do with your life energies, because your life is precious. It's a gift. How many people have I heard from that had thought about committing suicide, and then when somebody saved them from it or stopped them from it, or an angel tapped on their shoulder, or seemingly circumstantial experiences, just brought them not to, how glad they were later on when they didn't do it, because they found out, they realized that, oh, there's really a lot here. So people judging themselves, thinking that that's the way that God judges them, that's the biggest stumbling block that I think a lot of people had. And so as part of my thing, I would, for example, go to this Christian spiritualist church, and then I would go to my friend Felicia's, who is this wonderful spiritual healer lady, as modest as the grass is green. And I learned so much from her because she helped me attune to guidance. And once I said to her, Reverend Felicia DeMarco, I was all enthusiastic, and I said, so how do I get inspiration, like inspiration in writing? And then how do I receive inspiration in writing? And basically she like laughed at me like I was like just the dumbest. I mean, like, what did she have to deal with? She just laughed at me, like, she looked at me like, God, please give me patience, because this guy's enthusiastic, but he doesn't grasp the nature of. She said, when spirit, and that was the term which has been used for those from heaven or those of higher levels or higher understanding. She said, when they want to contact you, they'll contact you.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be as creative as you want in your own writings and this and that, but understand that when they contact you, they are contacting you.
See, that's why I never got people that say they channel or they summons these spirits and mediums. Fine, but I just don't get it, because the few experiences I've had, they've come to me out of nowhere. So,
well, that shows that you're in a very good place, my friend. Because there's people that are, well, for example, people are told in the book of yada yada, I'm terrible at remembering things like this, to seek the kingdom of God and all the gifts shall be given to you. So I understand that lots of people seek in different ways, because everybody wants to, at some moment in their life, every single person on this planet has wanted to share or experience something of a spiritual nature with somebody, where they were just loved, or they felt loved, or they felt like a glimmer of something. Even think of the rottenest person that you never even met, and every person has wanted that. So it's part of our human heritage. So I would sit in meditation, and both to write down my own thoughts on things. Originally on Facebook, Facebook forced me to limit myself to saying Scott Ufford, because they wanted to know what my ID was. But they wanted to actually see my real ID and all that stuff. But my term on there was Scott Ufford, psychic philosopher. And that was good for a long time.
Now, how did you become a spiritualist minister? What's that entail?
Um, I, excuse me, sorry. Well, at the same time that I felt guided to find out what was going with Edgar Casey's Search for God study group, to look up and see if there was one in Brooklyn. I had different intuitive insights and just understandings of things that couldn't be explained. And I pretty much kept my mouth shut unless during my life, except if there was something that I felt could be useful. And so I just went looking through the Yellow Pages, which was a yellow book at that time that had pages in it, actual.
I remember Yellow Pages.
Sounds incredible. Sounds like science fiction. It's like actual pages with actual names and categories in it and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's big in New York. It's pretty small in my neighborhood.
So, and I went looking through there. So I remember some psychic lady. I went to some tree class that some lady was giving, and she had said, you seem to be pretty good at this. And I go, whoa, what's this? And she said, look for a spiritualist church. She said, look for a spiritualist church. And so I know they've been around for like about 170 years or something like that. The whole concept of it is that in order to become good at any discipline, you can't just do like a fly-by-night thing. There's plenty of people that have had gifts of like little kids. You've probably had plenty of little kids who've when they were younger, they spoke to their relatives, and then they got chastised for speaking to their relatives who'd passed on. They're like, but mommy, but daddy, grandpa's right there. It's like,
I have not personally experienced that with any of the kids.
Me neither, but I'd heard it from other people about their children. And but I do have to say that, for example, a lot of kids are really tapped into something. Like, just as an aside, there's and intuition and creativity and spiritual guidance. It's like the arts is all part of the flowering of life. Kids need music, they need art. And if you look at like finger paintings or stuff like that by little kids up to age 6 or 7 or whatever, Picasso would have given up many parts of his body to have that ability of composition and straight from the heart speaking and explaining and the beauty in that little picture. So everybody has all kinds of skills and abilities. And okay, so what I did was that at this church, it was full of a mixture of people, but everybody there was dedicated in their own way. Everybody still had their own problems, their own neuroses, their own strong points. But the teacher who I'd said, I just want to learn how to do creative writing. And she said, stand up at the podium there and tune and ask for guidance. And I said, no, I'm really just here for writing. And then she turned into like a drill sergeant and she said, you go stand up there and just ask God to give you whoever it is. And whatever it is. So I'm like, yes, ma'am. She was a remarkable lady. And so we would basically sit in silence. We'd, the Lord's Prayer, different hymns, and we would pray into tune. And then in order to be ordained as a minister, which eventually I wanted to do, there was like 3 or 4 years of study and practice. And since sitting and meditating was something that I like to do anyhow, no matter how busy my life was, that worked for me. And
was this a
part of it
college?
was simply opening.
Was it a college? Was it a class?
This was a class. It used to be called the United Spiritualist Church. I don't know if they're still around, but
Huh.
this was under the. It's called the General Assembly of Spiritualists. Was the group, the over group that had different rules and licenses, and it all started from when there was a minister back in like a long time ago who had a tune for inspiration for people and um, had been set up and arrested. It was actually like a lady cop undercover who went to the church, and he was arrested for like fortune telling or something like that. And then he said, "Well, this has nothing to do with fortune telling. This is all about praying and asking God for guidance and to use your gifts." And then he said to the lady, was there anything I actually said or did that promised you anything or lift any curse or did any any crazy stuff? And she was like, "No." So he was like, what did I do?" She was like, "You prayed and asked for guidance for me in response to my questions that I wrote on a paper and put in a folder thingy that you didn't open up." And so case dismissed, and New York State passed a law saying that spiritualism was actually a religion and a spiritual path, and not at all like people sitting, monkeying around with like Ouija boards or trying to summon terrible things. And so I was certified in it, and I think they and I sort of. So there was like about 25, 27 years where this was really good. And then there's, like in all relationships, there can come to be a parting of ways. So I sort of parted ways in that.
Did you have
And
a church?
I was at a church, but then I parted ways with them, and I decided that I would just reassess all these things in my life and look at my own writing and figure out what I wanted to do. So I kind of like went into quiet mode. And then a few years ago, I joined up with there was a spiritualist church in New York City that I joined up with. They're very nice people, and I appreciate them. Everybody there was very sincere. It was just that people that have different understandings and experiences, whether it's clairvoyance or clairaudience, to put a fancy name on it or something, or clairsentience, whatever it is. People that have these things now and then are from all walks of life and all different experiences. So I think the Spiritualist Church kind of became a kind of a catch-all for people who wanted to develop their capacity and understanding in a way more focused probably than what people used to call like New Age stuff, channeling or something. Even though I completely respect everybody who says that if they sat for inspiration and they received something, I just go by whatever it is that they've actually said, what my own internal feeling of it is. And if it sounds wacky, then I'm like, that's good.
So you
That's
have a
good.
paper there to read? You want to read that off, your information?
My little information
Yeah.
sheet that
Uh-huh. Yeah, did you want to read any of that?
I can say, you mean like show it right now or?
No, did you want to read it so people can have it?
Okay. Um, yeah,
Oh, it's still up there. I thought you took it down.
it is up here. Still in the material plane, don't worry about it, but I don't want to bring anything falling down. Okay. Yeah. My name is Reverend Scott Ufford. The inspired guidance that I want to speak on a little bit today is called MLK Days, His New Dream. And as soon as that website's set up, it'll be mlkdays.com. Um, for my Edgar Casey's spiritual self-help novels, that website also got destroyed. So I'm rebuilding it absolutely completely at scottufford.com, SCOTTUFFORD.com. And if anybody wants to be on a mailing list, you just write yes list to revscottu@gmail.com. I'm Scott Ufford on Facebook. And there's one other fellow out there, I think he lives in Kansas, who has the same name as me and vice versa. I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he survives it, but people get confused.
Is your Facebook your picture? I can't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, on Facebook.
It
Yeah,
should recognize you.
my picture is on there. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or?
Well, I'd like to show the cover of my
Okay.
book from. First, I'll show the cover that I'll be putting out as an ebook in the next week or two. Is that showing clearly? Okay. Yeah. It's MLK Days, His New Dream. And somebody said to me, how can you say new dream? That takes a lot of nerve to say that. How can you say new dream? And I said, well, if you or I had been on a desert island and a newspaper washed up from a year or 10 years ago, and it was the first time you saw it, then that would be news. So, because this wasn't my idea, I finally decided, being pushed to actually put it together, what happened was that, or my leg went to sleep here, and it wouldn't look good for me to just completely roll out of the picture. Like,
well, I appreciate you coming on.
What happened to that guy? Still here.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's been very informative.
So Martin Luther King, I had heard his name a few times. I just heard his name, and that's all. Back when I was receiving the Edgar Casey novels, they're called Edgar Casey's spiritual self-help novels. And you can get on the mailing list for that, or MLK Days at scottufford.com.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Do you want to hear a little bit about MLK Days?
I think we're out of time tonight. Thank you, though.
Can you give me 30 seconds?
Oh, okay.
Okay. I think the reason I received this MLK Days thing was because there was a traumatic racial event that happened that opened my eyes and my dear friend in the building. And that was the night before Martin Luther King Day. And it was very shocking. And so the next morning, before dawn, I woke up and I was just hearing like Martin Luther King. I heard his name a few times. And so then I had a notepad by my bed because I've always recorded dreams and stuff. And I just started writing down everything that was coming to me. And luckily it was more legible than my usual handwriting. And I realized that I was being given a talk. And so finally I got around to just saying, let's put it out there. I feel prompted to. I realize I'm a white guy. And I realize that I got a lot to learn, and I've learned a lot, but I make no assumptions. But I'm being pushed to do this, and people will get something from it. So there you go. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
Really appreciate you and just doing this show where I can say these wild and crazy things.
This is the place to do it.
And feel comfortable in it. So I thank you.
I'm glad.
God bless you. Peace be with you. Thank you so much, Peggy. It's really been unusual and amazing.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. You was a little nervous in the beginning.
It's good. It's very good.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. God bless.